Greetings, friends. My name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach. And I just want to welcome you here to today's episode of Soul Empowerment. Today, we're going to be talking about what your shadow knows. And I know shadow can be sometimes a little bit of a scary subject, but I love it. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about. And so I'm really excited to be able to do that with my good friend, Nancy, and my colleague. Welcome, Nancy. Just kind of introduce yourself and let's get this ball rolling.
Let's do it. I'm Nancy, and I have the honor of working in the health and wellness industry. I teach a lot of mind-body classes. I get to work one-on-one with clients, helping them to uncover their limiting beliefs and blocks and become healthier as a life and wellness coach. I enjoy writing and speaking. And right here today, this is just a beautiful way for me and for David to share and to help each of you gain a little bit more and be a little bit more. So that's me in a nutshell. Not a nut, in the nutshell.
Well, you're a bit of a nut too, and that's one of the things I like about you. And
True.
I think we all have a little bit of nuttiness, which is what makes us interesting beings, I think. If we didn't all go a little crazy now and then, life would be pretty boring.
I agree. And I always tell my family, I said, I may be many things, but one thing I know for sure is I am not boring.
That's right.
I am not boring. I know I may not know a lot or do a lot, but I'm not boring.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's a good thing. And you mentioned about writing, and I just wanted to let people know that, you and I are both part of the same project with Anna Pereira and Laura DeFranco. We're featured authors on this book whose title escapes me at the moment. Can you remember the title of this book?
It's The Wellness Universe, Guide to Self-Care, and focusing on items and things to do for stress.
Right.
So it's a self-care book. It's going to be the first in a collection of books going forward. So we were hand selected to be the very first authors for this amazing book. It's going to be anything and everything to do with stress, because guess what? We've got such unique stuff going on right now that it's just stress just is what it is. So yeah, self-care and stress. And it gets released later on in November.
Yeah, November the 11th, I believe, is the date they chose for the launch. And so I know you and I are both under pressure right now to get our chapters finished because they have a lot of things to do to get the book ready before November 11th. And so I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
But I'm also excited, Nancy, because this is the first time you and I are doing this program by ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, our friend Stephanie, oh my God, I always get the name. I have a hard time with the name. Stephanie Padovani. Am I missing part? Well, anyway, that's close enough. She was with us for, I guess, 8 months for the first 8 episodes. And it was awesome to have her here. And she's just decided that it's time for her to move on. So we're going to continue and hold the fort. And so today we're doing episode 9, What Your Shadow Knows. And Nancy, I think the shadow is one of the most fascinating aspects of all human beings. I don't know how much work you've done with people on shadow, but I've done quite a bit, an extensive amount of work. And it's really been amazing to me to discover the part of ourselves, we call it the dark side because, it's in shadow. Yeah. But it isn't really dark in the sense of being bad or evil or anything like that. It's just parts of ourselves that we've hidden and cast aside because we have negative beliefs about those aspects of ourselves. And so today we're just going to talk about it. And I guess we might as well just talk a little bit first about what we mean by the term shadow. What's your idea of shadow, Nancy?
Well, my idea of shadow when I first heard the word, and I don't have the extensive background that you do. So when I heard shadow means to me, again, that part that's dark, wanting to hide behind something else. It doesn't necessarily. Initially, I thought, shadow is something to be to be afraid of, or have feelings of, guilt, embarrassment, shame. But it also can be just the undeveloped part that is waiting for the right time and place to bubble up to the surface to be explored and seen. So that's
Oh,
kind
I
of,
love that. That's
yeah.
a beautiful phrase. The undeveloped part that's just waiting to bubble up and be seen. Say more about that.
Well, in my life, there we go. Only in my life, I can't speak for others. I guess the parts of my life that I used to make excuses for instance, for me, it was, I don't have the skills to do that. I'm not developed. I'm not good enough. And so, that who wants to announce to others when you're in a meeting or whatever, oh, you know what? Sorry, I just don't have it. I'm not good enough. And so of course I want to hide that, because to me it was kind of embarrassing or just uncomfortable. But what I learned was that part that I used to make excuses for, oh, I'm not good enough. I just don't have this. It was just undeveloped. It wasn't what I thought in the moment was true. It wasn't. Case in point, really, with the book that we are writing, years ago, I was employed to do copywriting, and I enjoyed it, but I had a really mean boss that didn't like me. So how to get back at me was he would call me in his office every Friday like I was going to get fired, and basically gave the message to me that, why are you here again? Who hired you? Your writing's you're not good enough. So then I began to, oh, well, if this authority figure told me, young, fresh rookie from college, it must be true. So I carried that with me. But what I didn't realize at the time, that it wasn't true. It was undeveloped, but I kept it in the shadow initially because I thought it was true. And I don't want everyone to know that I don't have it. So that's my story with shadow not necessarily being, quote, the whatever.
Right.
But something that's in process of being developed, and it needs you to tease it out and unpack it.
Right. And well, you said a couple of really important things there, I think. And so I'd like to kind of tackle each one individually. The first was, well, I'm going to say them in reverse order, the way I remember, in the reverse order to the way I remember them. But most recently, you said something about, here was this person in authority saying something about me. And I want to just point out that is so common. In fact, I think we come into this world, and the first thing that happens is that we are told by our parents how to show up, what to believe, all these things that we're told we're supposed to be, whether they feel true and authentic to us or not. That's what we're supposed to do, and this happens from the moment we're born. Yeah. And it just continues to happen. And over the course of time, we become used to this idea of other people having authority over us. We disown our own sovereignty and our own authority in order to, I guess, capitulate, if you like, to those other people who appear to be in authority in our lives. So that's a beautiful thing that you mentioned. I'm glad you mentioned it, because it happens to everybody. Yeah. I don't believe that there's a single person on the planet who doesn't experience that to some level or another. And of course, some people get it to the extreme where it turns into, abuse and trauma and all kinds of stuff. But even the most well-meaning parents in the world are going to do something to try and control you and to try and direct your life. So all of us,
what's kind of interesting, what came up for me just now was, isn't that, okay, so, we were raised maybe to think that, or we're told you have to respect and respond to authority because, quote, they're there to keep you safe or out of trouble, or, they're dominant over you. And so, we probably, I know as a parent, I carried some of that old, well-worn shadow crap with me, and did it to my boys. We have all sons, and I'm learning now, really fully, that they already have everything they need. They, initially when they were toddlers and school age, they needed that supervision, but really once you get a certain age, that is, yeah, it takes awareness to realize, oh, am I putting my old shadow stuff on them? And they don't need to. They have what they need. And it's really liberating once you respond to that. Oh, wait a minute, I'm going into that mode again, and just back off, and let them shine. Yeah, that's another way shadow shows up in how we. Yeah.
Right. And that's, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because I believe that every single parent, every person who becomes a parent does the same thing. Now, the thing is, most of us, and I remember when my first child was born, I just did what I had learned from my parents. And it wasn't until my second child was born that something in my mind and in my heart started to stir and say, geez, maybe this isn't the right way to be raising kids. Maybe I need to be holding back a little and helping them to grow into what they're meant to be. It took me a while for that whole process to unfold, but it happened starting with my second child. And then with my third child, I was even more open to that idea of giving the child the space to grow. And so I became less and less controlling with each child that came along. And as you say, it requires awareness. Now, my awareness was still kind of, it was I don't even know how to describe it. It wasn't like I had this big aha moment and realized that I was, putting my own stuff on my kids. I hadn't quite got to that stage yet, but something wasn't feeling right, you know, and I just knew I had to shift my way of thinking. And so it was a very gradual process for me, and not just a beautiful sudden wake up call like some people have.
Now, I didn't have that wake up call either. I think with my wake up call was, not wake up call, but how I was raised. My mom had shadow fear. And so she unknowingly placed her fear on me. And what I realized once I became a parent was I knew that it wasn't right for me to put my fears or my shadow, what I didn't know that word then, onto our boys. I knew that would potentially withhold them from moving into the way that they were supposed to live their life. So I didn't know, but I instinctually had something in me that guided me. And again, my process, like yours, certainly was not this incredible awakening. Like, it was through, I call it stops, starts, lurches, hiccups. Falling flat on my
good words. I like those all. Yeah.
It continues. The work continues. I mean, it really does. Each time you open yourself to pausing and responding, that much more will be revealed. And that can be really hard, because in our society, we are asked to we think it's successful to be super busy, and don't always give ourselves that time to reflect. Yeah,
exactly. So going back now to what you had said before, that there was a second point that I wanted to bring up. It was another very, very good point. So I'm trying really hard not to forget here. The idea was, I think you used the phrase, I had this belief that I wasn't good enough or something, and I don't want to announce that to other people. And I thought, exactly. And so what do we do when we have a belief? The belief is, I'm not good enough. Now that in itself is not shadow, okay? That's just a dysfunctional belief that might be unconscious. You might even be aware of it. It doesn't matter. But it's just a dysfunctional belief. Where the shadow shows up is in the ways that you use to compensate for that belief. So in order to avoid being seen as someone who's not smart enough or not good enough, you may try to create a compensatory identity, or a wrapper, if you like, to show up more intelligent, more prepared to, maybe if you had been told that you weren't a very good writer, then you might find ways of making your writing look better than you think it is, right? By maybe fulfilling someone else's expectations of what kind of words you should use or anything like that. And this is what I'm talking about. This is where shadow behavior starts to show up. Okay. And so that's different from the underlying belief that drives the shadow behavior.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because it's really, really important, and it's something that I think people need to understand. So you have your unconscious, perhaps limiting, dysfunctional beliefs, whatever they might be, and they translate into compensatory behaviors that might not represent the true being that you are, but represent how you want to be seen in public. That's kind of how shadow works.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because people describe others as, oh, they're being I can see right through them. They're being a phony, or they're acting, blah, blah, blah. So that would be a shadow.
Well, and now you're talking about another aspect, which is kind of related to shadow, and that's the concept of projection. All right. When I see the phony showing up on the other side, it's because I know there's a part of me that sometimes shows up as a phony. So I'm actually projecting my own phoniness onto them, and it's being reflected back to me so that I can see it. And so projection is one of those beautiful, beautiful gifts that we have in our world that allow us to see our own shadow. And so we can go into that in more detail a little bit later. This is just, I'm loving the way this conversation is going already. It's awesome.
There's so many shadows to shadow. Right?
Exactly. And so I'd like to just invite the people who are on the call, if you are watching this on the computer and you can see the screen here, there's a chat box there. So feel free to put questions, comments, whatever into the chat box. We'll do our best to answer those as we progress.
Yeah.
And also, if you have your own experience with shadow, we'd like to hear about that too. So so we've talked a little bit about what shadow is, and I actually I wrote this book a while back. It's called A Life to Die For. And I put a chapter in here on shadow. Ooh. And let me just go to that chapter, and I'll tell you what my formal definition of shadow is.
You need that.
Yeah. So this might be helpful, and it might be too much. I don't know. So the way I've come to define it, it goes like this. A shadow is any part, aspect, characteristic, or behavior that you disown, disavow, deny, hide, or repress because you believe it is unacceptable, inappropriate, bad, or wrong. Now, there's a lot of elements to that definition. The first thing is there are just different aspects. We can kind of describe them in a variety of different ways. Aspects, qualities, characteristics, whatever you want to say. That somehow we got the belief in our head that it's unacceptable, inappropriate, it's bad, or it's wrong. And that's all that's happened. And so what do? We look for ways to cast it aside, put it in the background, keep it out of sight. That's really what shadow is. So it starts out that way. Remember, it starts as a belief. The moment you take a belief and hide something, well, something's going to sneak out on the outside and show up in shadow. That's the way it works. So
that's good to know. So shadow starts as a belief. There you go.
Correct. So does that all make sense?
Makes sense to me. What about you guys? Yeah. That's a lot of information. It's just a fascinating piece of the dimension of being human. And it's one that people who wants to have a conversation about our supposed beliefs or shortcomings or flaws,
Sure.
Yeah, we all want to spend time, of course, patting ourselves on the back for recognizing, commending, complimenting, or recognizing. But who wants to sit around and say, yeah, you know what, man, I've got some really crappy, nasty thoughts going on. You got a minute? I want to tell you, I just thought about you. I would have really thought about you, or I just want to share, most people are like, ew, why do that? That's negative.
Think about going in for a job interview, and how often do they say, well, tell me one of your weaknesses, or something like that. Well, if they really wanted to know my weaknesses and I really felt safe to tell them, then I could go into the shadow parts of myself that I'm aware of and say, well, I know that sometimes I allow this belief of not being good enough to keep me from showing up fully in the workplace. But how many employers actually want to hear that?
None.
None, because they are in shadow too.
They don't want to hear that, oh my gosh, this person that I believed in and I'm interviewing has just said that I want go-getters. I want people who are going to tell me they pushed through, they challenged themselves and came out shining. And I
exactly
$1 million for the company. What? You mean you don't believe in yourself? Oh, well, we can't have that. Well, isn't that a beautiful, it's kind of interesting though. Now that I know, it's like, wow, you were vulnerable enough to share truthfully. Don't I value integrity and truth as an asset for, if it's a job for my company, for this job, rather than everything's rosy and glowing and I've got it together. And, that's what gossip is. Gossip at work, it's a shadow.
That's exactly right. Very good. Gossip, that's exactly what it is. Gossip is merely just a verbalization of projection of other people. That's all it is. You don't necessarily know the truth about somebody, so you make something up, Yeah. And that's shadow behavior right there. Yeah, that's very, very good. I'm glad you're bringing all these to light. It's excellent. But here's another thing. Like I said, I've done a lot of work with people on shadow, and I have learned to find out about what's the deeper belief, the deeper truth, the deeper fear, and the dysfunctional belief that might be driving certain behaviors. And whenever I am able to get down to that part of the individual that I'm talking to and discuss in some detail with that part what it really wants. What I've discovered is that every aspect of ourselves, no matter what it appears to be doing on the outside, is always trying to accomplish one of two things. And that is to give or to get love. Everything that we do, everything that every human does is motivated at the deepest level by a desire to give or receive love. Now, it doesn't look that way all the time. And sometimes we see pretty despicable things happening in the world. But remember that people have all been wounded one way or another through their lives. And sometimes the wounds have been extremely painful for them and very traumatic. So consequently, they may have distorted views about what it means to give or receive love. And consequently, we see behaviors that to normal people, to normal healthy adults, looks bad, right? And we label it as bad or unacceptable.
Yeah.
You see? But in the deepest truth of the individual performing those actions, if I were to do a deep interview with that person, I would find that he or she was looking to create one of four possible states, and I want to make sure I get these right. I don't want to make a mistake here.
Yeah.
These four states are just being, that is characterized by words like I want to be present, I want to be full, I want to be whole, I want to be sovereign. A second one is serenity, characterized by words like inner peace, calmness, contentedness, and safety. I want love, literally love, and this can be characterized by words like freedom, acceptance, honesty, and unconditional love. And then finally, oneness, this notion of inclusion, belonging, family, and relationship. So that's what shadows typically are trying to achieve, one of those four states, all of which emanate from this notion of giving or receiving love. And that's really what we're looking at, is the dysfunctional pursuit of exchanging love. That's what shadow really shows up as. So think about your own behaviors. I think more often than not, when you've already talked about some of the ways that you show up in your own shadow, you're really trying to either create love for yourself in the form of approval or acceptance or something like that, or you're trying to express love for somebody else in a way that you think will satisfy them. So do you see what I'm saying? It really boils down to that for almost all of us. I haven't yet found an exception to that rule. I'll put it that way.
That's fascinating. Okay, I have a story to tell. It just happened this weekend. And as you shared that, it really touched me that it was a shadow story. So we have a dog. Dogs are dogs. And we have an electric fence. Well, it was a nice evening. We got home late on Saturday night, and our dog was kind of hiding in the front yard in between these hedges. And he likes to do what I call fake barking. He never runs in the street, but we get a lot of people walking their dogs late at night, apparently. And this, I had a weird sensation when we got home. I didn't know what it was until it happened, but I was like, where's our dog? I was looking for him because I was like, he always is around. And then I heard some noise. I thought it was teenage girls. I opened the front door and I was greeted. I didn't hear my dog barking or see him in the street, but I saw this shadow of a man with a dog walking his dog and his daughter. And he was swearing at the top of his lungs, assaulting the whole neighborhood, me and my dog. Our dog had scared him, I believe, and he thought the dog was going to attack him, but our dog was in the yard. And what came out of his mouth was I now know, pure fear of being hurt or surprised and embarrassed. And it was a string of the most vile stuff ever from him. And so I could feel myself ready to start launching some verbal assault. And
Sure.
I paused and I walked up to the driveway and I said, as he was going nuts, I said, and maybe I was doing my own work. I said, sir, we don't need any more meanness in the world. We've got a lot going on. Kindness matters, and we need to be compassionate toward each other. I'm really sorry my dog upset you and scared you. And, that didn't resonate with him. But I was like, wow, that just came out from nowhere. A need to share love. So maybe that was an end result of my shadow talking to me. Be kind. Have compassion. It was a very fascinating exchange of energy, with one person reacting violently to what he perceived, and then me perhaps giving my shadow had come up and out and was giving me what I needed to not feel energetically violated by his his misplaced energy. And that I believe that was shadow work.
There you go. Good job. Good job. I mean, we could go into some deeper understanding of that, but we have a limited amount of time here. So,
yeah.
But I think I hope people are starting to get the idea that shadow happens for everybody. I don't think there's a human on the planet. Even Jesus, I'm sorry to say, was plagued by his own, shadow that showed up for him in a variety of different ways. Now, he probably was blessed in that he didn't have nearly as much shadow as the rest of us do, but that doesn't matter. I mean, I think even anybody who comes into this human life form is going to experience the concept of shadow one way or another. Yeah. Because we all have ego minds. We all have belief systems. We all have these structures that come into play over our lifetime. And we all have parents who, in their desire to love us and keep us safe, inadvertently wound us by telling us that we can't do certain things that we are inclined to do. And so what we end up doing is imagining, oh, mommy's upset or daddy's upset or whatever, and I have to stop doing that in order to keep daddy happy or mommy happy.
Yeah.
This is the sort of thing that little kids, that's the way they think.
Yeah. My mom says I can't do that. My dad says I can't do that. You're bad. Or like me, my boss. Oh, well, I have to, I value my paycheck and I need a job right now. So I'm going to, let myself, let your shadow cover me and then, think that I'm whatever, second guess or judge or believe. It's very powerful and impactful. And it's not, I think, like you said, going back at the beginning, where when we hear the word shadow, we think of, don't go there. That's the dark. But it's not. That's the good news. It's a covering of the human condition given to us, brought to life by us, and maybe as we learn to release it, it's not this ugly underbelly that you need to, sweep under the rug and keep. You hear the term skeletons in the closet. Is that a shadow? Right?
I think that's just an alternate way of describing it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I guess I'm coming to realize now, a lot right now, that it's just a facet of our human beingness that needs to be lovingly looked at and placed in context.
Yeah.
Worked on, developed.
Well, exactly right. And you've mentioned a couple of things there that I think are important. And what I'm getting from that is to remind people that sometimes what we hide is actually a really beautiful, wonderful part of ourselves. Something that we may have been slightly wounded or got a little ouch in the heart because somebody said, "Oh, look at you! Aren't you so full of yourself?" or something like that.
Yeah.
You hear this message, you internalize it, and you think, "Oh, there's something wrong with me for being, this beautiful princess or prince that nobody wants to see." Oh. So you hide your princess or princeness. You hide part of yourself because you got a message that it was not okay to show it.
Yes, exactly. Like, an attitude of being humble or humility to the point where people don't know what you do, or, you don't feel comfortable at all sharing your accomplishments. I mean, not in a way that's narcissistic, obviously, or ego, but that is amazing. I mean, I definitely was raised with, we don't ever share, our assets or attributes, because that's bragging and making people feel uncomfortable. And we, don't ever talk about yourself. So when I was asked to, share my stories, I started authoring books. I actually hired somebody to write my story because I couldn't do it at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't toot your horn.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. People, that's true.
And you know what's funny here about this is I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've certainly noticed. When I see someone who's willing to stand up and unapologetically claim his or her accomplishments, I find that very inspiring. I think, well, why shouldn't he claim his or her accomplishments? He or she accomplished them.
Yeah.
And I think it's wonderful because those accomplishments contribute to the whole experience of being human. And I'm especially willing to hear that when I also hear the person talking about screw ups and mess ups that they've done. Then I think, great, now I know I'm talking to a real human being here who is not afraid to speak his or her truth. That is when I start to trust people. Yeah. Now, I don't know about you, but when I see people who seem very obviously to me posturing and trying to look good and trying to just be liked with their jokes and all this stuff, I kind of lose interest in them pretty quickly. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people in our society like that. We are strongly encouraged to behave that way in so many areas of our society. Yeah. So when you get someone who's truly honest and authentic, it's such a refreshing thing. But that person may have to deal with a lot of attacks from the other people because their shadows are starting to come up. Do you see? Yeah. And so we end up in our society with a whole collective shadow that starts to develop. And it's not a pretty sight when that happens.
Yeah. Which brings me maybe we can explore what is a process perhaps of understanding the difference between our shadow and others, and how we can begin to use it as an asset and an ally rather than this part that we want to keep undercover or hidden.
Right. Well, that's a great question. And in terms of processing, shadow work is pretty complex and deep work. And I don't recommend people do it on their own. I do recommend finding a facilitator of some kind to help you with that work, because it can bring up lots of painful stuff from the past that needs to be processed in a healthy and safe way. So I just want to put out that warning to begin with. However, with that said, I think all of us can and should review our belief systems from time to time. And, I've done a number of podcasts on this topic on my Life Mastery Wisdom podcast, where I talk about growth mindset versus fixed mindset and various other things like that, and I include little processes in there that you can use to help you open up and understand more deeply what your belief systems are. And then once you understand what you're believing, even at a very, very deep level, you can ask yourself a series of very simple questions. Like, one, is this belief actually true?
Mm-hmm.
And if it is true, well, how does it serve me to believe that it's true? For example, a belief that might be true is the idea, well, if I jump off this cliff, I'm going to fall to my death. Because we all have learned about the law of gravity. And it's a pretty reliable thing to believe in. Okay? So far, we haven't seen any evidence to say that the law of gravity isn't working, at least not in normal life. But other beliefs are maybe not quite so rigid. For example, to make a belief like all communists are evil. Maybe that's a belief that you have. Well, is it true? Is any belief that starts with all or none ever true? Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
See what happens when the moment you start thinking of a belief, you can just simply ask, is that really true? Why do I believe it? What brought me into that belief system? How does it serve me to continue to believe that system? And getting to something a little bit less obvious, maybe you have a belief in capital punishment, or maybe you have a belief against capital punishment. It doesn't matter which is which. The question you can ask yourself is this belief valid and true in my life? And simply say, why do I believe this? And again, you can analyze every single belief that you have if you choose to. And if you decide at some point during that process that the belief really isn't serving you anymore, then you can just consciously, just maybe write it down on a piece of paper, burn it in a little fire, and drop it into a trash bin. Say, I release that belief. It's no longer valid in my life. Now there's an empty space.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you eliminate one belief, now there's an empty space. Do you want to fill that with a new belief, with a new thought structure? Or do you want to just let it be for now and just simply say, I am open to whatever shows up here?
Mm-hmm.
So the more you do this work, the more you uncover your unconscious beliefs, you see? And as you uncover those unconscious beliefs, like the ones that say things like, I'm not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
You can then look at that and say, wait a minute, is that true? No, of course it's not true. I am good enough. I know that. Why do I believe this? Where did that belief come from? And what can I do to heal that belief? And what can I do to eliminate that belief altogether? So you see, every belief can be examined in that way. Yeah. That's one way that I teach people how to. You want to bring awareness to your unconscious stuff. Yeah. Release what doesn't work. Keep what does. Modify stuff if necessary to be more consistent with who you're choosing to be right now.
Yeah, I was going to say that was my process. I held, for years, held hard and fast to my belief systems. I mean, they made me, I quote, in my struggle and discomfort, those beliefs kept me small. And maybe in a way I was thinking I was safe because, I don't have to, I know I'm not going to go work in that area or this area because, I really don't have the the skills, the charisma. I'm just not good enough. So I'm just not even going to do any of that because, well, I can't. So that was that belief can keep you small and stuck. Even though my belief, I wasn't, I was uncomfortable with it, didn't make me feel good. It wasn't until I did some coaching intensive work that, those came up. What do you value? What do you believe? You say things that, all right, wait a minute. You said, I'm not good enough, or I don't think I can write. Is it true? Did you get put in jail, fired,
Right.
What, did something major happen that you don't bother, forget it. So I had to vulnerably unpack that belief, and you have to be self-aware, be willing to be vulnerable, because it hurts. If you have a lot of beliefs that quote are shadow or less than, that's step one, being able to stand and flip and look at those beliefs for what they are and not make excuses, just maybe even be neutral. Like, oh yeah, I suck at writing, or, I'm just really unorganized. Yeah, that's why nothing's ever going to happen. I'm like, really tease those out. Then once you tease them out, you can either shed a bunch of tears, laugh. No, is it really true? 99.9% of the time, it isn't, because we all have the capacity to move and grow. So yeah, that deep work, it's going to start with what you said. You have to begin to have that awareness, feeling of being in that, and then like you said, you typically need somebody to help you. We're not really good at going. Who wants to put a mirror up in front of them? And I think that's what we do with our shadow is, those beliefs. So you need a really strong person, a coach, an energy healer, counselor, therapist to help you with these. Then you have a beautiful ability to process and move forward, and make the shadow be front and center.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. And yeah, this is all really, really good stuff. And you mentioned something that I hear these things and I want to just, highlight them. You talked about how you found your beliefs all kind of limiting you and putting you into a box and stuff like that. I would like to assert, and in fact, I do assert that every belief is a limiting belief. And some people say, wait a minute, that can't be right. Some of my beliefs are actually quite empowering. Well, that might be true, but they're still limiting beliefs. And here's why. The moment you believe something, let's say we'll call it X, and X has just kind of got this little bubble around it, all right? The problem is anything that's outside of X tends not to be believed because it's not part of X. So when you see evidence that maybe contradicts what you believe, you may discount it, you may filter it out, you may inadvertently bias it. There's all these other things that can happen. When you see evidence that supports your belief, then you will simply glom onto that, and that strengthens your belief. So you're limiting your perspective the moment you have a belief about anything. Now it's a hard point to accept.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that is true. You're right. Yeah, I believe I'm not a good writer. So I want people to validate that so I can stay small. And I'm going to share my story with a few close friends or whatever. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Well, that's okay. Some people just suck,
Right. Let me find all the people who hate my writing so I can confirm that belief. Yeah, that's right. But my point of this is, when I understood this idea, I started changing my terminology in my thinking. Rather than saying, now I still do unconsciously every now and then, I'll say, I believe something. But when I'm aware of what I'm talking about, I usually try to say something different. I'll say something like, I have a theory that, and then I'll describe whatever it is that I previously would say, I believe that. What I have found is My ego mind, when I say I believe it, my ego mind latches onto the belief and searches for evidence to support that belief and excludes anything that doesn't support that belief. But when I say I have a theory, my ego mind has a different attitude about it. It says, oh, it's only a theory. Well, I guess I'm not gonna be quite so strong in my filtering mechanism. As long as I hold it as a theory in my consciousness, I then allow myself to be open to the possibility that my theory is wrong. Whereas when I hold it as a belief, I am more rigid and I tend not to hold that same flexibility. Do you see what I'm saying? So if you can just simply shift your thinking so that you're not saying I believe anymore, and instead you're saying I have a theory about something, I think you'll find that your ego mind won't latch onto it as much. And it's a fun exercise to try in any event.
Interesting. Yeah. So, okay. So I have a belief or a theory. I feel very comfortable. I feel very comfortable and adept as a mind-body fitness class teacher.
Okay.
So how does that work? It's positive and it gives me energy, but you're saying that that's a belief. And so I'm limiting myself.
Well, I like the way you phrased that. You said, I feel confident and adept.
Okay.
That's not quite the same as saying, I believe. You see,
Yeah.
it's more, when you say, I feel confident and adept, I believe what you're saying is, I just said that word, I believe again. I think what you're saying is, I see myself growing in confidence and adeptness. So I'm not holding myself at this current level right now. Do you see?
Yeah.
I see I think it's a different mindset. You're in a growth mindset the moment you say, I feel confident and adept in my teaching, which suggests that you're open to new ideas, you're open to new techniques, you are willing to grow and try new stuff, and maybe you'll discover that one technique that you've been using up to now, oh, maybe that's not such a good idea. And so you let it go and you find something new. Whereas if you hold on to the belief system, you'll be less likely to do that.
I see that. Okay. So if I'm holding fast to, I believe I'm an excellent teacher, maybe I'm closing the door on more growth promoting information coming in to give me even more impact as a teacher. But if I say I feel very confident and adept, that keeps the door open for potential and possibility that's positive to move in.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that.
Yeah. And that's something that anybody can do. I mean, it's just a simple shift in languaging and conceptualizing. That's all it is.
That's a great tool. Yeah. So the words that we unknowingly use might impact shadow to dig in a little deeper, or give shadow permission to be revealed by bubbling up to the surface, that it's no longer a heavy shadow. It's just an area that is ours to grow, to bring out, to become.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, Carl Jung is the person who has been credited with, I guess, codifying and formalizing the notion of psychic shadow in our consciousness. And that's only happened in the last, maybe 100 years, 120 years, something like that. I think that as a collective, as a society, we've always been aware of shadow, although we may not have called it that. We've always, perhaps in our different cultures and stuff, we notice certain behaviors that people do, and we're aware of this. But he formalized it and codified it and defined it and gave it some great structure for us to understand it. And I think that Carl Jung, one of the things that he claimed is that the entire unconscious is shadow, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I personally don't subscribe to that belief. I think that there's a way in which just because I do something unconsciously doesn't mean it's shadow that's doing it. For example, consider just walking. the process of walking. If you had to consciously think about every step you were taking, every muscle you were moving in order to walk, you wouldn't be able to do anything else.
Yeah.
So we put the act of walking, once we learn the technique, we put that back into our subconscious. And we don't think about it anymore. We are on autopilot with that particular behavior. I don't call that shadow behavior anymore. That's just autopilot behavior. So there's a difference between that, I think, and shadow behavior, which is influenced by these negative dysfunctional beliefs that we have, which indeed may be in the unconscious.
Wow. Yeah. That's putting a really incredible, more impactful spin on that, in terms of how this is and how it flows in our life. Wow.
Right.
Well, you're the shadow expert. So as we begin to wrap things up a little bit here, what are some concrete takeaways we can give our listeners or viewers, if they've had things, but you guys, if you have anything you want to share, a question or a moment, bring that up. David really does know his stuff, and like I said, this area is fascinating. I just feel really strongly when we're able to look at this aspect of our life in conjunction of how we do life, we're going to have more continuity and flow in our life and feel more balanced. I know before I started doing my work, I always felt a little bit out of touch with my life. Like I couldn't put my finger on it. I didn't know what it was. I didn't have the words, but I was not fully integrated in living. I think I was too much in touch with my shadow, and I unconsciously gave that full precedence over me. So yeah, if anything is bubbling up for you right now that you want hair on, or if not, maybe we can showcase a few more little tips for you to.
Well, yeah, this is, it's been a great conversation. And I think that you're far more in touch with your shadow than you realize.
Yeah.
And I think you know a lot more about it than you give yourself credit for.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I mean, you don't have to know everything about everything. Neither do I.
Yeah.
None of us does.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people out there who know stuff. And if we need information, we know we can find it. Right. So we have that ability, all of us. But what we talked about this as being the title of this being what the shadow knows, or what your shadow knows. And I think I want to kind of wrap up with that idea in mind. And so we've talked a lot about how the shadow behaves and the sorts of things that the shadow tends to do, and some of the ways in which it shows up. I often tell people, I said, your shadow, you don't have just one shadow, by the way. You've many different aspects, because we don't just put aside one part of ourselves. We put aside many parts of ourselves. So all of those are kind of like a cast of characters. If you think, I like to think of, the Lost Boys on Peter Pan. These kids that are there, they're unruly, they're not bad kids. It's just that they have not been, they've not learned anything. They haven't learned how to discipline themselves or how to be in control. So they misbehave. They're mischievous. They get in trouble. They do all kinds of things. And that's what our shadows do. So often you'll see, you'll be doing something, and all of a sudden you'll engage in a behavior, and you'll say to yourself, what the hell? That's not me. Where did that come from? I never behave like that. You'll say things like that. Well, my friend, that's probably your shadow acting out, trying to get some attention, trying to bring some awareness to some aspect of yourself that up until now you may have been hiding. That's what the shadow does. It does this in order to bring your awareness to some aspect of yourself that you've forgotten about, right? And that aspect of yourself, if you can just think of it as one of these lost boys on Peter Pan's island. Was it Neverland? Is that what it was called?
Yeah.
one of these lost boys just looking for some love, just looking for some attention, just wanting to be included as part of a family. That's really what your shadow wants. And every part of yourself, every shadow piece that you put aside knows something about you that you've forgotten. Mm-hmm. And it might be, you really are a pretty amazing writer. You really do have a gift with words. And I'm sorry to see that you've been shutting it down. I want you to express yourself more fully. Start writing some poetry. Whatever. Your shadow knows this about you.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is true for all of us. We all have these parts that are hidden aside, that we've cast aside for different reasons. And mostly because we're trying to keep ourselves safe. We're thinking that this is how we have to do it. So, and when you're 3 or 4 or 5 years old, I mean, how many strategies can you possibly know at that age? So you try something and hope like hell it works. And when mommy and daddy says good boy or good girl, you say, oh, thank God, I found a strategy that works.
Ooh, I didn't get put in timeout. All right.
That's right. So that's really what I want people to walk away from here. Your shadow is not something to be feared. As Nancy said at the beginning, it's not something to be afraid of. It might be something that you haven't yet learned how to control, and so you're not sure what's going to happen if you kind of let it out of this box, right? But I can guarantee you that if you find a coach who's willing to take you to that deep place and help you to regain connection with that part of yourself, and just heal it and love it and bring it back in and integrate it into your whole being, you will discover that it is nowhere near as bad as you might imagine it to be. That's what I can promise.
Definitely. I mean, I second that. It can be, a little bit daunting when you're just becoming aware to like, I don't even know how to start. I don't know what I need to do. I forget it. This is just the way it is. Have that thinking. But how much more beautiful depths do you get to discover, uncover, and become when you take that first tentative step into going beneath the surface, looking at the state of your beliefs? And that has been definitely my journey, and it hasn't stopped. I continue. Now I just have the tools that when something comes up, because it's going to every day, because I'm human, I have the tools now to pause and to kind of tease that out. Like, okay, where did that come from? Why did I react that way? Why did I say that or do that? And it's actually fun. It really is. It's not, you're not beating yourself up or putting yourself down. You want to be more you. You want to be more of your beautiful self. The world needs us.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. You mentioned it can be fun, and I agree with that 100%. I remember when I first started doing shadow work for myself back in, it's got to be 2003 now, I think. And I was terrified. I thought, oh my God, what are these people going to see, when I do this work? Are they gonna hate me? Are they gonna run away? Are they gonna despise me? Are they gonna cast me out of the group? Well, what I discovered is the exact opposite happened. The moment I was willing to look at some dark part of myself, and I have to admit that I didn't go that deep initially. I found some part of myself that I had been ashamed of, and I brought it out into the open, and I did some work on it. Yeah, there were some tears. I'll tell you, those tears were awesome. It just kind of flushed everything out. But the process, the people who were there witnessing the process were so compassionate and loving and accepting, even of that dark part of myself. And once I opened it up and got an understanding of what it was really trying to do, I fell in love with it.
Yeah.
So what that did was it taught me that going deep and uncovering the shadow is nothing to be afraid of, especially if you do it in a safe place with other people who are already predisposed to being unconditionally loving. So that's really what I discovered. And so now I look for opportunities to do my shadow work. I've become so excited about it that I don't mind doing it even in front of people I've never met before. So, Elizabeth, thank you, David and Nancy, for sharing your knowledge and support today. I have another obligation. I appreciate your time and the opportunity to participate. Many blessings and wishes of wellness for the rest of your day. Well, thank you, Elizabeth, and I'm so glad you were able to be here to join us. And yeah, we're going to be wrapping up here in just a moment. But if anybody has any more questions or you'd like to offer something, please feel free to do so. Nancy, do you have any words you'd like to say for us before we close out?
Show up to yourself, because you owe it to yourself to be brave, to believe in yourself, so that you can really flourish. It's really when you pause, when you're noticing those stirrings that may come up, bubble up as frustration or anger or overwhelm. It's when you pause in those moments with curiosity rather than judgment that your process of really becoming you, that's always been there, really flourishes. That's been my journey, and I think the world needs all of us to begin to lovingly do the work that of flourishing ourselves, of making friends with your shadow.
That's very, very nice. I love that word, flourishing. There's something like a kind of a dense kind of acceptance, I think, that I find in that word. So I like it. Nicole, you're so welcome. Thank you for joining us. And Jacqueline, same to you. I'm glad you were here. So friends, we're going to be closing out now. I just want to say thank you so much for being with us. I'd like to remind you that within an hour or a couple of hours or something after this episode is finished, you're going to receive an email with a request for feedback. I really appreciate it if you could, take some time to give us a review and write a comment or two, and just let people know what you got out of this, so that we can share the joy and expand our reach.
Yes, and if you want to find us, we are on Wellness Universe. I didn't put my link in. My profile is on Wellness Universe as Nancy Stevens, and yours is David McLeod.
You can find us both on the Wellness Universe. All right. Well, thank you. Okay. We'll see you next time on Soul Empowerment.
Been a pleasure, guys. Bye.